Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Correll, and I'm here with my co-host, Jan Jeremias, and we're going to chat for a little bit today and see if we can't do some extraordinary work with all of us participating. And I definitely invite all of you to give your energy and listening to this, listen with your whole body, give this a chance to come in your pores, your ears, your eyes, your nose. The whole notion of being empowered is that every cell in your body can be called upon to do what it does best. And so that empowerment is at the, micro nucleic level all the way up to your organs and your hair, so you just really want to feel that goosebump feeling all over your body at least once in the next 45 minutes to an hour. We'll chat till it seems like we ought to call it a day, but I think in the meantime, there's lots going on in the world, a lot of energy shifts. We've got some pretty serious hurricane activity going on in the Atlantic right at the moment. And that's all well and good, but it's also kind of a manifestation of the Earth's energy, coming full face with all of us. The story about it, what's going to happen, the preparations that people are making all up and down the eastern seaboard, the folks that are down in the islands and what have you. I mention that because that's an extremely easy way to demonstrate force. It's not power. There's a lot of power in a hurricane, but it is 100% force. It's not being carefully guided. It's not at any way, shape, or form intended to do any good. It's just something that happens. Now, power and empowerment, on the other hand, this is on purpose. This is directed. It's got an intentionality behind it. So just having the empowerment conversation is the beginning of having empowerment in your life. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does a lot. And I love what you're saying. First of all, I love the whole kind of embodiment of, to what you're speaking, the whole embodiment of the power of feeling it in your body.
Yeah.
And I think it's, when we do things from that place, it's very different. Like there is an awareness, and that's the word that to me comes to mind is awareness.
Yeah.
Versus on Friday, I gave a talk with Mary Jane, and we gave our session, and it was, hope is great, but it's not just like you hope something is going to work without basically almost like this, like hope without any action, and hope with action is very different. It's
Yeah.
like, the conversation we had was like co-creating with the universe. And that's what I think of, like, hope is just like, oh, okay, well, I'm not saying that it's not great to do this, but I'll just offer it out and it's going to happen. And I don't really need to participate at all versus what's my role in this? Like,
Yeah.
what do I need to do? And so I love that embodiment because it almost speaks to that. It's like, okay, I'm here and I'm going to participate. Like I'm going to be a vessel of this.
I particularly identify and love that characterization. It's almost like making a decision to be used, for something that is very good, to be useful in a way that you're granting access to your being in order to, or in support of, or intentionally causing something to happen, as opposed to buying a lottery ticket and hoping.
And when we were talking about it, it was like, I was saying that idea of hope or without that action just really does kind of that. And like I said, I'm not saying that I don't go up and get up in the morning and kind of hope that certain things are going to, or wish for something kind of thing. But I also know that I've got to do something in
Yeah.
some way. It's almost like preparing yourself for it to come. And then there
So
was a point though, I just want to say this one thing, but then there was a point that you do what you can do, and you kind of have to sit back and say, "Okay, I've done everything I know that I can do at this point. Maybe that'll change, but at this
yeah.
point, I've done all I can do, and now I've got to just sit back and let it unfold a little bit, and then maybe take another action." But there is a point where you kind of have to sit there and say, "Okay, I've done my part," you know.
Yeah, I think anybody that's ever done any work with affirmations, um, the affirmation process is speaking into existence those things that you want in your life. But the real power of the affirmation is not like point and click, I want to be a millionaire, and poof, there's $1 million standing in front of you. It's like a process of changing who you are such that it can occur for you in your life and you will receive it. Okay. There are so many people who are asking for things that's already around them. All they would have to do is just open their hands and set down the things that they're cluttered with holding in order to receive what the universe wants to give to you today. So you've got to be more than aware, and I think the power of the affirmation process in terms of the usefulness of the law of attraction is all about preparing yourself as if it's happening now in your life. And there is something very, very almost magical, but at the same time scientifically documentable and provable, that people who generate positive outlooks also generate positive outcomes. And they do so at a higher rate than people who generate negative outlooks. And that's an important thing to, kind of be responsible for in your own life. Maybe, just maybe, you're so busy telling everyone what a rotten life you have and how horrible it is to be you. And your attention is just used up. You got no more attention to give, to have the things in your life actually come into being. So there's that. And that's at a very fundamental level. People who are quite accomplished at exercising on a daily basis their muscle with the law of attraction and powerful affirmations, they will actually start attenuating, like there's an antenna on their head that now seeks out the things that you're saying that you want in your life. So it's really important to speak it in the positive and not in the negative. And what I mean by that is that most people will generate, like a future possibility as a complaint. Well, it doesn't work that way. Whatever you're complaining about, guess what? You get more of that and you get to keep it.
One of the things that you said earlier, Bill, that really I was thinking about a lot after this session I gave on Friday was this idea of, okay, affirmations are one thing, is you can say affirmations, but
Yep.
sort of like what you said, and it's that embodied experience of feeling what it would be like to have it already. So
Yes.
actually feeling it, like envisioning, and I did this on Friday, envisioning that it had happened. And if it had happened, how would I feel? And then, and then it shifting, whatever, and then something shifted. But it was just so interesting because it's different than just like, I mean, I've done affirmations for years. And, it's very easy to read an affirmation or to think of an affirmation. But then it's just, they become just words. And basically, you could be reading any words. Like that's how disconnected you are to them.
Yeah.
But when you read them and then you sit there and say, okay, well, this has happened, or, if it were to come to me, if this comes to me, how would it feel? Like, what would I see? How would I feel? What would I experience? Then it takes it to a deeper level. And then it becomes like, it becomes very experiential versus very superficial.
Right.
And also there's this element, I think, when you like of choose, it made me think of choosing affirmations wisely, because it made me think of like, I'm not going to choose an affirmation like, that my brain does not believe can happen, because there's a really great BS meter in my brain going, if I say that, you're full of it. Like, you don't believe that's going to happen. And so it's like saying something that is, or phrasing it in a way that is achievable, and then recognizing what it could feel like if you had it.
So I completely appreciate what you said. What I heard was that there's a good reason for being at least semi-realistic in what you're affirming. And that does sound like a scientist speaking. Okay.
I didn't mean it in a scientific way. I'm just speaking from my own experience of like, if I tell myself some stuff, I'm sitting there going like, you're full of it. This isn't going to happen.
Well, let's look at this. Let's look at some other examples of what we're talking about, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, for a moment, you picture a child who has the audacity to say, I'm going to be the best golfer in the world. And then you take the millions of children that say that. Somebody's going to be the best golfer in the world, but they all start out by deciding the end game that is absolutely miraculous to achieve. And that's really the best way to describe it. So, for example, let's take an older child like a Michael Jordan, who happens to be in the 9th or 10th grade, hell of a baseball player, right? Tries out for the basketball team. He hasn't had his full growth spurt yet. And the basketball coach says, Mike, you're just not cut out for basketball. You really ought to just stick with baseball, play some football too if you want to. But in that moment, Michael Jordan didn't make a decision that he wanted to become a basketball player. That's when it clicked for him that the game that he wanted to play was to be the best basketball player that ever lived. So once his mind was made up, his body hadn't even grown into being an adult yet. So did he make the basketball team the following year? You're damn right he did. He was all state, all everything. And then he goes on to North Carolina and he plays with Dean Smith there for 4 years, and winds up going, a number one draft pick in the first round when he gets out of college. He takes the North Carolina Tar Heels to national championship. So the thing of it is, it's not like you say it one time. However, what you can learn is to say it with conviction, such that your body will accept what you're saying right now because you've proved yourself right in so many other instances. And we really have, if you stop and think about it, there's a lot of evidence for if you think you can do a thing or you can't, you're right. And that's what Henry Ford said. But
Mhm.
what he really means by that is that whatever you tell yourself, you will actually make that come to pass or not. And you have ultimate control over that. And this is a guy, I guess, who started out being a bicycle technician or something and got really interested in this whole idea of putting motors on things. And then, you know, who would have ever guessed that he would have a company that would be in existence 130 years later, you know? So what I would say to what you said was the place to start is for most people, and they do this when they set goals. For instance, there are people who get into a situation and they set a goal to attain some ridiculous level of performance in the first year. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's a virtual certainty that the people who said they couldn't do it in the first year almost never do. But you got to set the goal somewhere, don't you? When do you know it's the right time to think big or dream?
I mean, I yeah, I'm not, I mean, I think the I'm not gonna go ahead, Bill, please share.
Yeah, so here's the thing. If you want to accomplish something really big, start sharing it with other people. If it's something you're pretty sure that who you are right now does not possess what it takes to make that happen, share that idea with other people. So first of all, the naysayers are going to give you a blueprint for what you have to have handled before you can cause it to, to come into being. You're going to get a few cheerleaders, who just kind of like, yeah, you've done this before on other things. I believe in you. I know you can do this. And I practice what I preach, Jan. If you follow me on Facebook, I'm very public about the challenges in my life or the things that are coming up that I think are going to be a bit challenging for me. Like for instance, each time I've taken any one of the the mastery tests for different types of things having to do with the insurance/investing industry over the last 3 or 4 months, I've published it and let people know I'm going in there. And in each case, each one of these tests, roughly 60 to 70% pass on the first go, but 30 to 40% don't. So the being willing, to be public with somebody, or public with something that people can actually use against you, if you will, like you're a dreamer or whatever it is. There's going to be enough people who are going to come around and basically say, I appreciate that you're telling us that this is a big deal for you. I mean, there's other people who are going, who cares, Bill? Keep it on your page. I don't want to see it in my feed. You're going to get a lot of different reactions. But I feel like there's enough evidence that I've got over my life that when I decided that I was going to be different than how people viewed me at a particular time, I had to go and get coaching from a completely different place. Does that make sense? I really had to, when I decided that I was going to do certain things in my life, I had to go and find other people who already knew that what I wanted to do was possible. And those are the people I had to hang around with for a while in order to get my list lined up so that I could actually accomplish it.
And I guess I've always approached it differently.
Yeah.
Like big things in my life, like big decisions, I very rarely shared them with anybody else. Um, and so everybody kind of does that differently. And it was like, and I'm not talking about like career changes, like big decisions
Right.
that I had to make. I very much did that on my own for, I would say, the majority of my life, for good or bad. I
Right.
mean, and then, making poor choices sometimes and great choices other times, like all choices, it's like some worked and some didn't work. But one of the things you said that I actually, when I think it's great to think big and dream big. But I think in the normal, I mean, I'm just looking for the average people I meet who are handling a lot, that, like, they're not in a place, they're not in that place of dreaming big.
No.
And I'm not in a critical way. I just think that, so I'm like, start small. Start, not, like, and it's almost to me like, choose things that are not lofty goals. Choose stuff that is obtainable, that there's a possibility of.
Yeah.
Because then when it happens and then it gets reinforced. Then it's like, "Oh, that worked out. Great. Now I can try it again." And so it's almost like this feeling of like, of exercising a muscle. It's like exercising the intention muscle
Yep.
so that you can see the evidence of it. Because you see evidence for everything, like you said. If you want to see evidence of, like, you know, I mean, you look around and you probably can see 100 examples of stuff you might have failed at, and 100 examples of stuff you might have done well. And human nature is to concentrate on the stuff you didn't do well. I mean, that's what people do. So if you want evidence of that, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
So if you want evidence of the other, so I'm just like, surround yourself with the opportunity to be able to be successful at it and have that success be revealed to you, like shown to you,
Yes.
and not like 10 years down the road, like in a week or 2 weeks or a month, so that you can say, "Oh gosh, look, I intended this and it came about."
So you know what I love about that? I think you're absolutely right. We tend to feel like our most recent experiences are the ones that are most probable to keep happening, you know? So what I love about what you're saying is that, really in those circumstances, especially if you've gotten bonked big time, really don't even feel like getting out of bed some days, right? So when that happens, yes, by all means, all you have to do is to set some small goals. And I think there's been a lot of books that have been written that are right up the alley of professing exactly what you're saying. There's one that was written by a retired general, which I think was called something like "First Make Your Bed." Um, and then there's other things. Jordan Peterson, "Clean your room." Before you go out trying to change the world, take control and responsibility for your own space. And I agree that when you start setting up a set of wins, it makes your overall feeling and outlook a lot more positive and a lot more like maybe dreaming a little bit more. Real hard to do that when everything, you're just crushed. It seriously is. It takes an effort to call your best friend.
I mean, I love it because yesterday I came when you were talking about, like, start out, like, basically start at home, whether that
Right.
be with like, with caring for yourself, like literally, like physically, like showering and getting out of bed and eating well, or or eating, or whether it means your surroundings. But I mean, yesterday I came I came home and I cleaned my front porch, which has needed it desperately. Basically power washed power washed the cement on the floor, and power washed the siding, and wiped down the front door, and kind of thing. And so, it was like, okay, well, and
That's
there's
pretty
something
awesome.
and there's something very therapeutic about doing that. It's like, one is because it is tangible, because it is very visual and tactile. So you look at it and you can see the results of your labors.
Yes.
There's so many things of, like, especially with intention setting and stuff, there is this whole element of, like, there's nothing tangible. There's nothing really to look at yet. So it makes it a tinge hard for us to believe. And so when you do something very, like, like you clean something or you take a shower, you're going to look at, what I mean, is you're going to feel better or whatever. It's very obvious. And sometimes we need that obvious.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that being our own worst critic, it has to be short of magical thinking, right? Otherwise, it's going to be, what's the use? So making a decision, seeing something that needs doing, doesn't mean that you really noticed that it needed doing before. It might be just that now this is obviously needs doing and I can do this, so let me do it. And how did you feel once you got finished cleaning up your porch?
I mean, that's what I said. I mean, I felt, it felt good. It looked good. It had, and I was like, oh, this has needed it for so long. So there's this feeling, obviously, of accomplishment. And like
Yeah.
I said, and visually, it was very obvious because it looked clean versus looking dirty. So,
Yeah, and our secret satisfaction and pleasure from having done something really quite simple like that is, it's good. It's almost like self-care.
mhm,
But yeah, I'm worth having a porch that looks good, darn it.
mhm. No, absolutely. Excuse me. No, but absolutely. And I think that, um, there is something that's very, um, I guess the word that comes to mind is satisfying.
Agreed. We all need to have a little satisfaction in our life. I think, people can't just exist on really ridiculously hard work forever. We got to have cookies every now and then. And those cookies are really, really appreciated and well thought, at particular times, especially if you're on a roll of having 4 or 5 things in your life that haven't worked out. I have a good friend. He's become a good friend of mine in the past year and a half. He's a hardworking young man. I think he's probably about 26 or 27 years old. He has 2 small boys, and he and his wife are estranged. He doesn't get to spend too much time with his 2 boys, but in addition to his day job, he's working very, very hard at being a prize fighter of all things. He loves to box, and he has been in like 5 fights in the last year. He was decisioned in all 5 fights. One time by 3 points after 8 rounds.
So, Bill, before
Yeah.
you go on, explain what that means, because I'm not into boxing. And so, what does decisioned mean? And what is, like, so I can understand. I
Great
can understand the
question.
story.
Great question. My assumption is that everybody grew up watching the Friday night fights, right? So
That's right.
so here's what happens. There are usually 2 ring judges that sit outside, um, and watch the fighters hit each other. And they score points for different types of blows. And then the referee who is inside the ring with the two boxers is also keeping score at who did he see land more blows, so that if a pair of fighters is hitting each other, equally as well at the end of a first round, they would be tied at 28 points apiece or something like that. However many, good clean hits they thought that these guys had. So the bittersweet loss of having been decisioned at the end of 8 rounds by 3 points, a score of something like 96-93. You could feel like you were winning a fight. And if you lost 1 round or 2 rounds by a lot, but were very close in the rest of the rounds, that might be the point that you get decision by points. So 5 fights, 5 second places. And he has put heart and soul into this whole thing. His normal weight, just walking around, is somewhere around 150, 152 pounds, and he looks ripped. I mean, you see these guys that do these extraordinary things for have low body fat and all the rest of that. He still manages to lose 15 or 16 pounds to wrestle at 134, 135. I mean, not wrestle, but box. So what seems, interesting to me is, why is he doing this? I'm watching him go through these extraordinary workouts, and then the last 4 or 5 days having to lose 3, 4, or 5 pounds to make weight for the boxing match. And I just wonder, why doesn't he fight in a little different weight class? Why doesn't he fight at 145? Because clearly that would be easier for him to maintain a fighting weight or get to a fighting weight without having to give up a lot of his strength, if you will. Because if you think about it, most of your weight you lose is going to be water, okay? And you have to be super hydrated, to be able to do this boxing for that intense workout for what turns out to be a half hour, or more. But the point is, whatever he does after he takes the loss, he gets himself back up again. He goes back through his training routine, and he gets himself lined up with another fight. 5 times. This young man is one of my heroes. He wants an outcome in the future that he's willing to accept the humiliation of putting all this work in for over a year and having no result for it. Except the result that he keeps getting is the other guy is getting more gloves on him than he is on the other guy.
I mean, I think we could take that example and bring it to, I can think about my own life or what I own different things where at some point or another, it's almost like, why am I doing this? Because, it's, and it has to be, and in that way, that's when I'm truly appreciate, like, why am I doing this? Because nobody's listening, or because it's so not accepted and mainstream. And so it's constantly like fighting a battle, trying to encourage people to think differently and to look at things differently. And then you realize it's a calling. Like, that's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
It's like you can't get up in the morning, like you can't envision being any different or thinking, it's so much a part of who you are.
Yes.
And that's what this reminds me of as you're sharing this story about this young man, is it's so much a part of who he is. It's almost, it really to me is like he can't get up and fight in a different whatever weight or weight class. It's just, this is a part of who he is, which is he may not be able to explain to anybody else. You know, and I mean, I think that's different examples in my life. I'm thinking to myself, I've gotten asked so many times, like, why do you do what you do? Like, you know, and I, it's a good question. I asked myself a good question, but I can't think of doing anything else.
Yeah, that's that old story with the guy with a mechanical pencil poking himself in the eyeball, and somebody walks by and says, "What are you doing, and why are you doing it?" He says, "I'm poking myself in the eyeball." He says, "Well, why are you doing it?" "Because it feels so good when I stop."
Right. Yeah.
There's another aspect to this young man, and that is having these two small boys. I think, and I'm going to go out on a limb here. I don't have any evidence for what I'm going to say right now, but I have a feeling where he is coming from is he wants to be a different father presence in their life than what he experienced. I'm really taking some liberties here with not having the background facts, but I do know where he came from in the neighborhood that he was raised in, and I also know that what he says about his kids and how important family is, and how important being a good provider is for him. I think there's some of that going on there, that he wants to demonstrate to his kids that if you want something badly enough, you keep going until you get it. I mean, that's my story about what he's doing. His story may differ completely from what I'm seeing, but that's why I choose to use him as an inspiration for me.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of times, one of the nicest compliments that I ever got was, years ago when I was away and I shared a room with a friend of mine. And she actually said to me, you actually walk the talk. Like what you tell everyone else to do, you actually do.
Yeah.
And that was one of the nicest things she could have said to me.
Yeah.
And I think that if for this young man, I understand you don't know for fact, but it would not it wouldn't surprise me if that's his intention behind it.
Yep.
Is that like I want to show them how they should be in the world. Like I want to give an example of how they should be in the world.
Yeah.
Or I want to be the example of, how I'd like them to be in the world.
Yeah. In his own way, what he's doing is as big in his life as Michael Jordan's declaration when he was told he would not be picked for the basketball team. Yeah. And it's funny because you hear all of these different stories, like the Beatles were actually in Decca Records, had the opportunity to be signed in like 1961. And the president of Decca Records basically said, there's no listeners for your music. Talk about getting something completely wrong, and then look at Tom Brady. What, 5th round draft pick? When you get out of college, everybody wants to go in the first round, and they always want to get a multi-million-dollar contract. Well, Tom Brady just kept waiting and kept waiting and kept waiting, and finally he got picked. And he had to wait, on the sideline for over a year. He came from Michigan, and I guess originally he was actually born and raised in Southern California, so he was raised a 49ers fan. So playing for the New England Patriots was probably really low on his priorities. But when he got his chance to step on the field, when Drew Bledsoe wound up getting injured, the rest is history. He went on to be what people argue the greatest of all time, playing quarterback in the NFL. But there was, I think the funny part of it is once you have chosen the path of excellence, you have to stay on that path every single day. There really, it seems like there's no timeouts and no substitutions. However, when you get the habits of excellence, it's easier to perform in that zone. It's easier. There are less impediments that make it difficult for you to show up and be a top performer, if that makes any sense.
But I think it's interesting is because I think a lot about, like, if you follow anybody who's, in athletics is always great. And I'm not a big sports, like I don't follow sports except for the Olympics.
Yep.
I mean, I love to watch the Olympics, or if there's a sport I like, I might watch like like the world championships or the national championships if I like it or whatever.
Yes.
But you realize the sacrifices they make, how dedicated they are, that we see them on the podium or whatever, we see them whatever, but what they did to get there from, and you just learn that people, basically people don't wake up one day and without and stand up on a podium like the next and get a gold medal for something.
Right. Yeah. If you're lucky, you have some sort of reasonable success in the first years. Okay. But you can take a look at anybody that has ever risen to the top of their profession, like you said, whether it's being a scientist or being an actor or being a musician, it has been at the expense of a tremendous amount of hard work. And I always remember that saying. What my grandfather always said was, the reward for hard work is hard work. Once you take the road of hard work, you have to be tougher than the work. You don't have to be tougher than anybody else. You got to be tougher than who you were yesterday, addressing the hard work. And I think that puts it into a little bit different perspective than thinking that you're actually competing with other people, because we don't.
I actually love that, because I actually was listening to somebody and they were very, recently, and they were saying the only person I'm competing with is I'm competing with who I was yesterday.
Yep.
And I love that. I'm not, and I think with that, first of all, we know, like, all the, I can quote like a zillion quotes with like, comparison is the, comparing yourself to others is like, and I think we do it. That's just human nature.
Right.
But I think the idea of competing with yourself, or actually just like working from the place of who I was yesterday, also throws in this whole idea of compassion and elements like that, of being compassionate to yourself, like looking at where you are on a given day and saying, okay, well, I got no sleep last night, and, or whatever, or that was an excessively hard workout yesterday, and today I'm feeling tired.
Right.
Taking that into account, like it's like this automatic sort of self-processing of like, okay, where was I yesterday and where am I today? And then working from there. I mean, when I got when I had the injury in the beginning of May, I reset my steps because I was not going to, I wasn't walking. So I was like, not going to, whatever. So every week now I increase it by 100. Like that's
awesome.
And so so it just, because I knew I wasn't going, I could barely get across the room, and sort of setting like these lofty goals for myself was not going to happen. All it was going to do was make me even more depressed than I was, because I'm not used to moving. And then all of a sudden, every week, I'm like, okay, 100 more, 100 more, and just, not 1,000 more.
Right.
But moving slowly in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what I particularly love about what you're saying is it's your world. You can choose to live it as a battle, or you can choose to live it as a game. And I think a lot of people will like gamifying, where, yeah, you're adding 100 steps a day. Well, at the end of the week, that's 700 more steps than you did the previous week. So that's a big deal. I mean, the interesting thing is, I remember I had a really great friend who had an antique store, and he and I were both about the same height, and about the same age. This goes back about 35 years ago, and he had this store in a metal sided building with a concrete floor, and all of his antiques were in it and everything. So I went in there one day, and he had installed a basketball backboard and hoop. And he said, "Bill," he said, "guess what?" He said, "I've decided I'm gonna learn how to dunk the basketball." And I said, "Don, what are you, 38, 40? I know you're in reasonably good shape and everything, but have you ever dunked a basketball?" He said, "No, I never have." And he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, more power to you, bud." So for the next 3 years, every time I came in, he'd say, "Watch this." He'd go over and he would not be able to dunk that basketball, but he still was showing me every time I'm getting closer. you know. And I think, if I'd have been on the ball, I would have said, "You know what, Don, here's your problem. What you should do is you should be able to adjust that hoop down to a level where you can dunk the basketball, and then start raising it up about a quarter of an inch a time. And when you can get it, each time you get to the point where you can do it, then raise it up again a quarter of an inch or a half an inch or something like that." But I think that's what a lot of young kids do. And it's less about believing whether they can do it, and it's more about their capacity growing over time. And of course they can do it.
Well, I love that. That basketball. Years ago, I used to swim in the morning every
Yeah.
morning, and the place I swam actually had a training pool or a teaching pool, and basically it was a pool with a drop floor.
Yeah.
So the floor would go down. So you'd get in, and especially with little kids or whatever, and they get in, especially if they're afraid of water.
Right.
And maybe it's at their waist, and then slowly over time they increase it just the teeniest a bit. So then by like a week later, it's now up to their chest. And they're going in it every day. And it's such a slow incremental increase that they don't
Yep.
even notice. And then all of a sudden, you know, they have to dog paddle to like be able to like, stay up to the surface or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I always thought it was it's a great method to be able to do that kind of thing. And I love your friend who was gonna,
Yeah. The final outcome was a little bit bittersweet. I lost contact with him for a while, and then I ran into him over at Stop and Shop, and one of his eyes had completely gone dark. He had ocular cancer, and he ultimately passed of it about a year and a half after I saw him that last time. But having a good friend that was always on the lookout for me for different kinds of furniture and what have you. I've got an old Victorian home, so in our 30s and 40s, we were making a little bit of money, and so we'd buy some antiques. And I have one antique that's in my living room that I look at every single day. And Don gave me one hell of a deal on it about 40 years ago. And so every time I see this, I always think of him. And right next to that is one of my high school buddies actually built the chimney in my home. And that was, I don't know, 47 years ago. And so we'll talk to each other on Facebook, and I'll say, "You know what, Bob? I'm reminded of you every single day. I'm sitting here in my recliner and I'm looking at that beautiful chimney that you made for us." We never enclosed it. It looks like it belongs there, It doesn't belong there in a Victorian home, but it's exposed and it looks absolutely phenomenal. But you know what? What it all comes down to, at the end of every single day, if you practice being kind, start with yourself. Give yourself a break and a chance to have a winning day. Always take a moment to breathe and think back through the day and enjoy the smiles again, a second time. I think the more you feel like you're a winner, the more you are.
Like that.
And that's my hope for everyone who's listening, is that you're never a loser as long as you get the message and you get the lesson. The only way to lose is to have an occurrence that doesn't work for you and feel like it was unfair. Because everything in life has the possibility of giving you that bit of information that it takes for you to move ahead rapidly. Maybe. What if? Indeed. So, Miss Jan, we did it again.
Yep, we did, Bill. We did.
Any wrap-up thoughts for our audience and possibly for me?
You? Oh, no, I mean, I like what you shared at the end. Kindness is a big thing for me. And I think that it's always strange because I assume that I just go into the world assuming that everybody's kind. So it's not like it. And so when people aren't kind, I think I look at it and I'm like kind of puzzled in a way.
Yes.
And then I'm not, because then I go to the fact that, well, maybe they have a lot going on, or maybe something's going on in their life. So I do get there, very quite quickly, but it always just seems kind of off. But then when you realize when you're off and maybe you don't act like, it's not even that you're unkind. It's just that you're preoccupied, and that comes across as being unkind or aloof or disconnected in some way. So one of the things you said is just to be kind, which I love. And then the other thing is to, look at the small, look at anything at all. I loved what you shared, and feel proud that you did it. Not in a like kind of haughty kind of whatever, but if you're in a really bad place and you got up and you brushed your teeth, celebrate that.
Awesome.
And if you're somewhere else and you did something else, like you cleaned the porch or whatever, then celebrate that.
Yes. Well, I'll turn myself in. I absolutely love our little chats. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite all of you who are listening to reach out to somebody in your life who is a good friend and let them know. Let them know what a big deal it is to have them in your life and how much your life works because they're in it. And that if they ever need anything, they should really call you first. They should always call you first. And I think it's really, really a good time to do this for the people that we love. Reach out to them, let them know we're here, let them know they matter.
Absolutely.
Well, with that said, thank you very, very much, Jan. I really appreciate our time together.
And thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Everything.
You're very welcome. No extra charge. You're a buddy.
No extra charge.
With that said, ladies and gentlemen, we are lighting the candle, a world that works. Have an amazing week. And like I always like to say, go out, live your life fully, have a great experience, and then come back and tell us all about it, please. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Xvadio Podcast Network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.